So this is the last of our series about our pelvis, and so previously you'll remember we did the posterior pelvic tilt, which is when you've got a flat back, and if you're using that triangle method with your hands on your hip bones and on your pubic bone down here, your fingers would be pointing outwards, or your pubic bone is in front of your hip bone. Last week we did about a twisted pelvis, so that was when one hip bone is in front of the other hip bone. And this week we're going to talk about the anterior pelvic tilt. So that's when you've got that lower back arch happening and your hip bones are in front of your pubic bone down here, or your fingers are pointing down towards your heels, lower that way. Now, this is probably the most common issue. If you think about it, especially when we've been pregnant, we carry out here, what happens is we do this because it's easier for us to hold. So an anterior pelvic tilt's very common after you've given birth. It's also very common to the majority of the population. But it is a huge problem. I could probably do a 6 to 8 week course on how to correct that anterior pelvic tilt. But today I'm just going to give you 3 or 4 exercises for you to do to help you. So what happens and why is this bad? So with an anterior pelvic tilt, your hips go out, which thrusts your bum out, and it thrusts your ribs out. Now, this is bad from a diastasis point of view because it causes some of that rib flaring to happen. And it also, this arch in your back puts a lot of pressure on your abdominal wall, sticking your stomach out further. Plus, it actually makes you look bigger than you are. So if we bring it back in, we suddenly look a lot leaner around our abdominal area, which is something that we all want. But there's a lot of other issues with that anterior pelvic tilt. The fact is that this tilt, what happens is it tightens your hip flexors, your glutes, because of this arch in your back, can't fire as well, so they get weaker, and your lower back gets really tight, which causes a lot of both lower back pain, but also hip pain. And if you watch me, if you have this tilt going on, what happens is your hips start to internally rotate, which causes your femur to internally rotate, which causes knock knees, which then lower down causes flat rolled in feet. Now you can imagine that knock-on effect. So not only are you getting lower back pain and hip pain, but the knock knees, if you're doing running or any other high impact, is going to start putting pressure on your knees. And the flat feet will also cause ankle issues. Not to mention, if you're like this and you've got this arch in your back, in order to stop you from falling over, your upper thoracic region is going to start rounding, causing that inward rotation of your shoulders, more pressure on our abdominal wall, and that sort of kyphosis look with the lordosis back, okay? So lots of issues. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with some really basic, simple moves that everybody can do to help fix it. So I'm going to come back to the wall, and the first exercise I want you to think about doing is what's called a wall handstand. And it's simply going against the wall like this, palms flat against the wall, heels against the wall, bum against the wall, shoulder blades against the wall, and the back of your head against the wall. Now, this might be, if you've got a big arch like this going on, it might be incredibly hard for you to be able to get your shoulder blades against the wall without doing that rib thrusting. So if that's the case and you cannot stand like this, I want you to take your feet slightly further away from the wall, and even you can slightly bend your knees and come into this position. And what we're going to do is we're going to hold it for 30 seconds, making sure our ribs are down, our lower abs or our TVAs are engaged, and we're going to hold this for 30 seconds. Now, if you're in this position, what you're going to ideally try to do over time is bring your feet in until you can hold it with your heels against the wall. Okay? Might seem like a pretty basic move, but this can actually be very hard, especially if you've got this inward rotation as well going on, because it's really hard to bring that back. So you're aiming again for your heels to be against the wall, your bum to be against the wall, your shoulder blades, these part here, to be against the wall, and the back of your head against the wall, and holding it here. Note I didn't say I want you to push your back in against the wall. I don't want you to round your back so that it's flat, causing that posterior pelvic tilt, because that's going to put a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor and cause other issues. So a little gap here is fine, but we don't want that big arch and rib flaring to happen. So you're going to hold this for 30 seconds and try and do this a couple of times a day. So that was exercise number 1. Exercise number 2, we're going to take it from there, and from this position, I want you to lift your arms up, give a shoulder shrug, down and down. Now again, this might be very hard for some of you to hold, so bringing your feet further forward will make this easier. And bring it up, shrug, down and down. Always being conscious of keeping your TBAs engaged and your ribs down. Shrug, down and down. So I want you to do 3 sets of 10 of those. So 30 seconds with this handstand, then 3 sets of 10. Make sure you exhale as you're coming up, shrug and down, shrug and down. Now, there's one more exercise I want us to do against the wall, and this is a leg lift. So again, you're going to get yourself all nicely placed against the wall, heel against the wall if you can, and shift all your weight onto one foot, and then you're going to lift your leg up and down. Again, if you can't keep this posture, bringing your leg out slightly so that you can line yourself up against the wall and bringing it up and down here. This is going to work your lower abs as well as keeping yourself straight and working your back into the correct position. Right, so now I've got one more exercise, and you're going to have to find a doorway to do this. So I'm going to go over to the doorway. So what you're going to do is you're going to grab yourself a doorway, and we're going to do heel slides. So you're going to set yourself up so that, again, you have the heel, your bum, shoulder blades, and back of your head against the wall, and you're simply going to slide your foot forward and back. Now, if you go too far and slide your foot too far back, what will happen is you'll get an arch. And for this particular move, you're trying to keep your lower back against the wall. So pushing it back and forward. Now the slide doesn't matter. It can be a tiny movement. It's about keeping that posture. And again, if that's a little tricky for you to do, bring one foot forward away from the wall and slide it back and forward. Remembering no arch, no rib flare, keeping everything down and just sliding it back and forward. And if you keep doing this for a few weeks, you should be able to come to the point where your heel is against the wall, your back is against the wall, and you're sliding it in good posture. Okay, so let's just do a quick recap with what those were. So there was the handstand against the wall, holding for 30 seconds. Then there was the arm raises whilst you were still against the wall. There was the leg lifts, like this, against the wall, and then the heel slide. And those 4 exercises will help you gain that strength to maintain a good posture and to work with your anterior pelvic tilt. And don't forget to do those hip flexor stretches as well, because that will really help you out. Okay, well, I'll see you guys all next week. Bye.